Welcome to another episode of Mindful Drawing. Today we'll expand the practice to be more of a creative exploration, drawing together, but allowing a more freedom to grow outwards from the initial marks and explore something visual, something exciting between the object and the territory. I like to do this practice when I doodle or when I'm thinking, or as a way of journaling, but more visually rather than with words. To begin with a few arbitrary marks and then expand out from each until they interact within the space of the page and start to suggest a new world living and communicating through the lines in the act of drawing. So if this sounds interesting to you, come join me. It'll be a relaxing and opening experience, and I hope we can share it together. To warm up for that, it's kind of about making a few arbitrary or playful marks and then just drawing them together into a larger landscape. I'm going to use a pen or a pencil out really far, like holding it way at the back to just mark on a blank piece of paper for a little bit. Kind of like a paintbrush. So it has a little less control. I'm just starting in some spot and like letting it at first just glide across and see if you can twist it, push a little harder, push a little lighter, let it just loosely drag, wiggling it back and forth a little bit, just to find a mechanism of some kind of control or interface with this tool from a little bit of an awkward or non-normal position there, way out on it, so that a lot more of the little muscles have to think about their engagement with this pen or pencil. And it might jitter around a bit more. I noticed it gets caught on the paper actually quite a bit more, and then has some occasional random spikes as my arm has to adjust to this way of holding. And that just helps for me get that focus back to my body's connection here with the pencil on the page. I'm just letting these flowing lines move across the page as I play with holding this here. And trying a couple other directions, just pulling away or pulling towards, just as we warm up that hand. If it helps, I think I'm going to stick with my right hand today, just because of the position I happen to be sitting in. But you can always switch hands to get a little activated, move a little faster, or sometimes we get to that limit of our torque and things jump around. They move and just pull away from the body for a bit to explore kind of our whole range with this extended interface to the page. If you can begin to bring some attention of tracking along previous strokes, how can you do that without meeting it perfectly, but still flowing in the same direction? Brings our acuity back to the visual connection to the page. It helps connect that hand to the instructions that are coming through our eye and our mind. I think once we've got a few of those in all directions, we're ready to jump right into the larger drawing. I have a couple of pens here. This is a nice fine point but very inky felty pen. Can't find my calligraphy pen. That's okay. And then I have a little bit harder felt tip pen. I might switch back and forth between, just depending on how it feels. And on a new page, a new piece of paper, I like to start with a blank page. The openness and dauntingness of where to begin is in many ways, in a sense, having the eyes closed or just not really focusing and picking a place, setting the pen down, just moving it a short distance and letting it track for a small amount on the page, and then finding a new location, setting it down, and moving similarly a short distance, and kind of letting it push and pull itself around based on how it interacts with the paper, where I feel the friction, where I feel it start to drag, gently changing direction to see if it can find smoothness, continuing that light rolling sensation from before, and just getting a loose constellation of some of these lines. You don't need too many, just something to fill out the space and break that initial barrier of the first marks, arbitrary marks, like some scratches on a new car here. And bringing the attention into any one specific mark, since they're all the same and unique, and just starting to make some shapes around it. We start at the end of one and continue its trajectory, bring it back to itself, perhaps flowing along and repeating, or allowing that paper wiggle and twist to expand from it, and staying with the same mark, continuing it out and around and back towards itself, so it begins to build up layers based on that initial interaction with the paper. And with a pen or like a heavier pencil, kind of like having these moments where things feed into each other, they overlap and kind of bleed together to make a bit of a thicker territory. Just let the ink do its thing. And after a few of the same repeated marks, find our eye drawn to some of these areas where repeated interaction with the page has made it a little thick or chunky, disconnected. And that's where I like to start the next act of drawing, just pulling from there to seam it together and allow the ink to do the work. And let this be an exercise of just following where the pen goes and making decisions in the moment of right or left, fast or slow, to connect or keep extending. And after a kind of object or condition has developed around one mark, to move to a new one and repeat a similar process within that new space of the page. Also with the changed extension of the arm, something now might be further away or closer to us, and that affects how we move the pen, how we hold the pen. Can I keep my arm up off the table now, or is it extended too far and I find myself riding along the surface a little bit more? Or is it maybe too close and my fingers are starting to pinch? And instead of correcting those, to be aware of them, to know they might not be the optimal ways of practicing drawing, but that if we bring our attention into some of these inconsistencies or awkward positions, we can start to use them to become a part of the drawing. They might increase the arbitrary or randomness of some of our jitters and allow for a more organic, unique emergence on the page. And then in those we also find a space to handle discomfort when things can't always be set out technically perfect for us. We're trying to work through an idea. It's not about exactly how you hold the pen or the pencil, but it's trying to engage with on the page. And we continue to make these weird drumstick shapes that are happening here on each of these marks. And again, kind of the same way, but unique to each position. You might find new forms or shapes are emerging from what you're doing that you think are visually interesting. and that we can build upon in each one an iteration from the one before, a chance to continue to explore in this practicing field, the space of shapes and forms can evolve over the course of time in the paper, but share a kind of common root here, embracing that uncertainty of what we might discover, the thrill and engagement of having a chance to make micro adjustments over the space of a page, creating a living family condition of figures, forms, collections of lines, and seeing where it starts to go. And perhaps every once in a while, trying one backwards. I was drawing primarily to the right at first. We'll just change that first initial action and draw to the left. Might engage one first mark with another as their space becomes tighter. An opportunity to bring things together, engage them. As now the object nature of the page starts to blend into a field condition, and allowing the act of drawing to be one of exploring interaction between us and this page, through the pencil or pen, through the texture of the paper, through this repeatable and variable act of creating. So when things begin to form close to each other, to potentially collide or intersect, use that as a novel opportunity to maybe explore the emergence of something new within the drawing, seeing how it might inform the next layer, but in each case only happening at that moment until it jumps to another and tries again, developing a language of drawing specific to here, to us, to each of us in our own practice. Yours may look very different than mine. Maybe you're drawing straight lines, sharp edges, perhaps the wiggle is uncomfortable or exaggerated. We'll just push ourselves into that space of what's happening this morning with our arms, hands. See where it will take us in developing that language. And over time, perhaps that grows with our practice of doodling. It grows into a field of research and discovery or creative practice. But it doesn't have to. You can just live here for a few moments in the morning as we create connected, separate shapes into some emergent field of interaction. Here on the page, I think I'm going to start to exaggerate some of my motions as I'm getting more comfortable with them, as the language is more fluid, and allow these to encroach on each other's territory from those original spawning marks. They can flow into one another, press, they can even overlap, searching for what they're communicating from their initial emergence here on the page into bodies of interaction together in the same space. Sometimes in speaking through this, I find myself wanting to enter into narratives of trying to bring myself back just to the act at hand, a forming of some lines of birds, some shapes, the intensification of the medium, the gentle finesse of just allowing things to flow lightly across the page and not being concerned with their outcome as much as just really enjoying this act of moving the pen to feel the smoothness of this paper here. It's a Bristol with a nice smooth finish. This pen, I believe, is getting a little old, so it tends to rub, bring a roughness between the moments of gliding. Let that really flow through my fingers, feel the vibrations gather and then release. Not so dissimilar to an act of breathing, bringing that into our motion. Sometimes it's so easy when we get really focused or absorbed to shallow our breathing, forget to breathe even, perhaps holding on to the tension or excitement of creating and making decisions here on the fly with our eyes, and bringing that back around and remembering to let the breath out fully with one flowing curve. We need to breathe in the space between acts and then let it out again. As we let the pencil flow across the page. And take it in between acts and out through the expression. We should be warmed enough, and engaged and primed enough in our language now that we can let that attention expand to where we can guide our breath, or at least be aware it's happening while we still let the pencil flow on the page. Then we'll begin to use all of my marks here. I might start to find something new to emerge. Perhaps inside of each form or shape there's little connections that catch the eye, flowing moments, intersecting moments. Perhaps there's places where a wobble has introduced an anomaly and we come back and begin to seam that into the whole, taking a in-breath and then letting the pencil flow ink or graphite together, maybe exaggerating some of the loops and jitters. I like to come to these moments of rigid intersection and decide with the pen whether they merge together a bit or just kind of collide into a dense intersection to draw the eye into that inky medium across the page. Perhaps they are moments also in these intersections that can spawn new curves that grow outwards from any individual shape and begin to connect them to others around the page. This place that can reach out and bridge the gap, this new territory that we've created, and look for more of those. Nice thing about a highly variable and complex set of lines and curves is that any decision we make can be riffed and pulled into the sequence if we trust and follow similar patterns of drawing. So it can just keep growing upon itself. We don't have to concern too much about where it will grow to, but instead can bring that attention to just tracking each curve, tracking each line, and letting it create new visual connections, new spatial organizations, challenge our vision, perhaps challenge the acuity of our hands to fill certain gaps, to meet the start of a curve and the end of a curve somewhere, and to use misalignments and connections as opportunities to fill space with difference within this repetition. The last few minutes as I track across this, I'm just looking for areas that draw my eye to maybe emptiness or blankness as new ground for expanding the curve condition, engaging a little bit more ink into the page, getting that warm-up exercise with the long handle of the pen or pencil, influence, greater density with subtle wobbles, catches of the pencil on the paper, as I thicken the space, bring some creative practice to the intersections, see where they might become moments of interface between two objects, thickening that threshold between them. Concept or idea of mindful drawing, that there's a lot of potential and power in just starting a doodle, to just make a few marks on a blank piece of paper and use them as an opportunity to connect between these objects, to go somewhere unknown with the sureness and confidence that we've been able to practice our breathing and our ability to make a mark over and over in repetition, that the map will develop and the visual space will emerge. We just focus in on where we make the mark and where we let it expand and inform us visually, or perhaps even without our eyes, just drawing. And I feel now I'm reaching a point where I either deeply sink in and start to turn this into a larger drawing or composition, or I let it be for this morning and know that I've given myself some time and some space to create and relax, just be here in a moment shared with others. and be grateful that we can start our day in this way and enjoy its influence for whatever we have to move into next and create in the rest of our day. If you would like to keep drawing, I'm happy to stick around. I thank you all for joining me. I hope this has been a nice chance to really just get in and draw for the morning and express some of your creativity latent within each of us as we move these pens and pencils around the page and let the figures emerge and speak to each other through our focus and attention on the act of creating curves and lines and shapes. If you liked the video, please give it a like below. If not, let me know why in the comments. Let's see what we can create together as we practice an act of mindful drawing. Thank you, and have a wonderful week.